Okay, we can argue about the names of vitamins later. Here's our plan today. We are going to learn about, not like Martin Luther King Jr. in his speeches, because I told you guys, a lot of you have been exposed to this topic in like 8th grade English, child development class, or junior English doing your speech, okay? Yeah, and there's something with English teachers, the Holocaust, and the Civil Rights Movement. So, listen, Ms. Wright. Here's what I like to start with, and I think all of you, the first 2 minutes of every class every day, you should at least think, if not vocalize, this question. Why should I care? Why does this matter, or how is this going to help me? Because if those 3 questions are unanswered when we start, your attention span is going to be pretty limited. Okay? So let me try and answer those before we start with that. Here's what I always like to say. Some of us have this illusion that after 1965, when the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed into law by LBJ, it's like, all right, everyone has equal rights, we're done with that, let's move on. That's been buried and put behind us, okay? That isn't true. I gave another class yesterday an option. I said, do you guys want to be really angry, furious, steaming, hot, mad at the beginning of class or at the end? And I let them pick, and they picked before class, like early on, and we did that, and I was like so mad I couldn't even teach the rest of the day. So I'm not going to give you guys that choice. I'll make you really, really mad the last 2 minutes of class. Okay?
Why did you tell us that? No,
so you have something to look forward to.
Now we're all going to
just make me mad.
Then I'll make you more mad later. Now, don't worry. The class is going to end with you walking out really upset, Tyson. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Maybe. Now, here's a good example of why this matters. Who are you guys looking for? She's not here today. She's supposed to be in this class, but
Isn't she in soccer? Did she go do the soccer pictures? Yeah.
I haven't seen her, so
Okay. If she comes back, it's because she's taking soccer pictures for you, but really good.
that's okay. So, here's why the civil rights movement still matters today. In 2009, on a national test of reading and math, students in all 50 states in the United States, okay? So we're talking 5 or 6 years ago. If you look at the average math score of 9-year-olds, what grade roughly are 9-year-olds in? 4th grade, roughly. That's pretty early on in school, right? There is a serious gap by race in standardized test scores for even 4th graders in our country today. This is not 1965. Now, you can find charts of what teachers like to call this the achievement gap, like by race. You can look at ACT scores today by race and by gender, and the same thing exists. It was worse before 1965. There's a serious gap between blacks and whites on average, and Hispanic students and white students on average, as young as 9. Now, get up to your guys' age. In math and reading, there's huge gaps. Some of those tests show as much as 30% difference on average today. Now, you're probably going, okay, well, some students are lazy and some are smart. That's true for all of us in this room, right? But here's what you have to see. As a national average, if those gaps exist all the way through school, something is wrong with the system, because we have to agree on this. Your race has no determination in your intelligence. The last group of people who thought that, we call the Nazis. And if you want to agree with them, I suppose that is your choice. But race is no indication of intelligence.
Why are you so smart?
It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with their race.
All of them knows. Every single one of them. Race.
Listen, yes, because you guys all know so many Asians living in Big Piney.
Okay,
Wayne and Russell
Kenny's. Smartest people in the history of the school ever.
Yeah.
Okay, let me give you an example. Stop. You ask a question, I'll answer it. Let me give you an example.
Is it just a coincidence that they're Asian?
There's no such thing.
So listen, you know 2 Asians, therefore you judge the entire Asian race,
Okay,
which
do
by
you
the
see
way
the
is the
memes
most
about
populous
Asians?
continent on Earth today.
Yeah, there's a lot of memes about the Asians.
So listen, and I will explain a good example. It has nothing to do with race. Now, on average, do Asian students do better and make more money? Yes, but listen, that has nothing to do with race. Here's what it has to do with. I'll give you an anecdote. One day on an airplane, I sat next to just some random dude who showed up. Okay, he sat next to me. He was Indian, like from India. Okay, not like Indian reservation, like India. And I talked to him and he said, "What do you do for a living?" And I told him I was a history teacher in Wyoming. Okay, and he and I started talking. Raza, shut up. I talked to him and I said, one of the things that I really respect about Indian culture is how much they value education. Now, by definition, Indians are Asian. They're from Asia. Not who you think when you think like Asian stereotypes, but Japanese, Chinese, same thing. Okay? It is an effect of their family. Okay? What this guy told me is if you didn't graduate from college, your family would disown you. If you came home and said, like, I quit school or I failed out, your family, like your father would say, you are not my daughter. Get out of my house. And he said in India, people walk around and brag like, I have a master's degree. Like this guy had a master's degree in film from UCLA, and he was studying in America to make educational videos for kids in kindergarten in India because they teach English and their native language at the same time. So he came to the U.S. to study at UCLA, which is the best film school in the world. And he said, we walk around and brag about education all the time. Like, I got straight A's, I got a 4.0, I got a degree. And I laughed and I said, listen, where I teach, education is valued a little bit differently. And I told him a story about a guy I know who's like a ranch hand. Okay? And he didn't go to college. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't walk around and brag and say, I have a master's degree and you don't, so you're inferior to me. But this guy brags about not going to college. Raza, will you get that, please? And here's what you ask this guy. He's a ranch hand. So you guys know, like, he works hard, like manual labor, outside, bucking bales, feeding animals. I totally respect that. But in an Asian culture, you would not brag about being a ranch hand. You wouldn't go home to your parents and say, I couldn't make it in college or I didn't go to school, so I just do manual labor. You would get like shunned, like that's embarrassing. But this guy, if you ask him what he does for a living, he's like, here's what he says every time. I'm feeding America. Now here's the thing. That shows in your society how much do you value that role. In India, you brag about college degrees. And I told him in Wyoming, people say like, farmers and ranchers and even ranch hands are more important than teachers. Teachers just stand up and talk with a shirt and tie on and get paid too much. What do they actually do?
I thought teachers didn't get paid crap.
Depends who you ask. Okay, so here's my point. If your family valued that and encouraged that and rewarded that, whatever that behavior is, like education in most Asian families, you see on average that they achieve at a higher rate. It has nothing to do with race. Race and culture are different. Take a sociology class.
So those of an Asian culture are smarter than those.
No, you're not smarter. You're saying like, okay,
More driven.
Applin, can I please have my book back so I can throw it at him and make him read it next?
Yes.
Can you bring it on Monday?
I hope so.
Tell Google now to remind you. Intelligence, Raza, intelligence is different than achievement. Now, if you look at pay by 3 different criteria, okay? Moving from left to right. High school dropout, no GED. How much money do you make on average? This is from 2013. High school diploma or a GED, but no college. Some college or an associate degree, that's a 2-year degree like Western Community College. a 4-year bachelor's degree, or a master's or higher. What do you make on those levels of education by race and by gender? And here's what we find in America. This is today, people. Not only does race matter, so the blue column on the left, that's whites, okay? Blacks are the gray color, Hispanics are more of the white. If you look at the very lowest end, there's not much difference, and quite frankly, if you drop out of high school, what I always tell kids, you are committing economic suicide, okay? Because if you want to go out and make $500 a week, and you're going to work hard for it, you're not going to sit behind a desk and do paperwork. You're going to be like out in a field or on a construction site. You're going to work super hard and get paid very little. Okay? But there's actually a bigger gap today between genders and pay than between races. So basically, black and white guys are closer than white guys and white women are at every single level. Now, if you just go to high school and finish, you will make a couple $100 more a week over 52 weeks a year. The 52 weeks a year? Okay, times you work 40 years of your life. That's a huge difference. If you go get a 4-year degree like the University of Wyoming, you're making more than double someone who dropped out of high school over your entire lifetime. Okay, but this is today. This is not 1965. Now, to me, one of the worst indicators of how this topic is not like dead and gone and buried and fixed in American history. If you look at the prison population in our country, which is one of the biggest problems we have today, per 100,000 people of that race, there are 380 whites in prison. Okay? So take 100,000 random whites in America today, 380 of them are in prison right now. Now, you take the same size, 100,000 Latinos in America today, and there are almost 1,000 of them. So like 1 out of every 100, almost. That's triple the rate that whites show up in prison. Now, here's the scary one. Even though blacks are like 15% of America's population today, if that, if you look at the prison population, take 100,000 blacks randomly from the United States today, 2,200 of them are in prison. Now, here's what people say. I had someone in the teacher's lounge try and debate this with me. And you can't win debates with stupid. You just got to quit before you get more stupid. I had to heat up my lunch. If someone gets me a microwave, I'll never have to go there again. I need to. I didn't say that. But here's what people tell me. Okay, look at all these blacks. They broke the law. They deserve to be in prison. What are you trying to say? We should let them out? No. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. Do you see a connection between these three things? Education gap, wage gap, incarceration rates. What's the connection?
That
The least
the
people
less
educated.
education they have, the less money they make, the more likely to go to prison.
Ding, ding, ding. What did we learn in the Great Depression about unemployment rates? When unemployment goes up, what else goes up? Crime. Now, if you don't know this, because the world is a lot bigger than Big Piney. I don't know how big the town was that you lived in Oregon, but some of you have been exposed to bigger cities than Marbleton, Big Piney. That's good. Okay, was there more than one high school there? Good. If you look at education today, this is not something that I have a solution for. I don't know how to fix this, but it's a problem. Here's why this problem exists in part. Public schools get their funding in a lot of states from local property taxes. So your mom owns a house in that public school district. When she pays her taxes on her $1 million mansion, the school gets a lot of money. They use that pile of money to get really good teachers, iPads, fancy stuff, and they have a great school. Now you go across town, I don't know if this is true for your town, Tara, but picture like Salt Lake. They might have 20-something public schools. Are there areas of Salt Lake that you drive through and you look at the houses and go, I would never want to live here. I'm going to get shanked or shot or run over or see a drug deal every day. Now, look at the property value of the houses in those neighborhoods. How do they compare to the ritzy hills? The rough neighborhood, what's their house worth? How much is the school bringing in property tax revenue? And did you know that how good your school is affects what your house is worth when you sell it? Because if that school district is better than the house across the street, houses are identical, wouldn't you rather live in the house that gets your kid a ticket to the good public school? That's why the value goes up. That house is going to be worth more.
So what you're saying is we just need to get enough rich people here and build houses around the school.
I used to teach in a place that was like that.
Yeah, the Jackson School.
And have you seen what Jackson pays teachers?
Probably a little more than here.
A lot more than here. Okay? Now, I don't have an answer to this. I'm showing you this is the problem. Okay? Because in those schools that don't have the same property tax revenue, they pay teachers less. They have some old crappy textbook that another teacher threw away. They don't have technology. Their schools are unsafe. They don't have good school lunch. Well, no wonder, because you know who lives in those neighborhoods. On average, a minority student goes to that school. That's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're lazy. It's an environmental factor. Plus, does your family encourage and hold you to high standards when it comes to education? Well, if you're black and you live in that neighborhood, and your mom is out not making very much money, and your dad is in prison, no wonder your test scores are lower. Do you see how that's connected? So if anyone says, well, since MLK gave some speeches and LBJ signed some laws, civil rights movement is done, they don't understand the United States today. Now, is it way better than 1965? Absolutely. Is it perfect? No. And here's what you must admit to yourself right now. You live in LaBarge. You don't know anything about race relations. You live in Marbleton. You are not an expert on, well, all black people this and all Asians this because I know two of them and they were smart, therefore all of them are. No. That is not how that works. Now, if you want to learn more about race and these questions, take a sociology class. I will say when I was in college, sociology was my least favorite subject. I had a raging feminist professor who hated all things male-related, and her and I did not get along. When I went and taught sociology for the first time, my favorite teaching experience, I taught a unit on serial killers. That was fun. And then I taught a unit on race relations on a reservation in a school that was 50-50 white and native, and I was the white guy teaching Native Americans about race. That was interesting. I learned a lot. So take a sociology class if you like these questions. Now, my point is this stuff still matters today. It's not like, oh, we're done. Thank you, Martin Luther King Jr., everything's accomplished. Remember, in 1968, he got assassinated, right? And one of the other big figures in the civil rights movement, do you guys know who Malcolm X was? He got assassinated too. Yeah, the president who first really started to speak in favor of civil rights. Yeah. What happened to him? He got assassinated. I don't think he was as all about that as Avery thinks, but I'm biased on that question.
Wait, so is this Malcolm X, or is he the one who started the Black Panther?
Here's what I'll tell you about Malcolm X. Okay, Martin Luther King Jr. said, nonviolent protest, let them arrest you when you break the laws and just smile and go to jail. Malcolm X said, we'll never get what we want fast enough. You want to make an omelet, you got to crack a few eggs. That's basically what he said. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. In Canvas, we're going to go to the civil rights module. And you're going to see the last thing in there says, events of the civil rights revolution. I like the word revolution because it sounds like a bigger change than just a movement, like a few steps versus full circle radical change. I'm going to put you in a group. When you get with that partner, one of you is going to make a copy of the Google Doc at the top and share it with the other person or persons in your group. 2, 4, 6, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, Mr. Walton. Did everybody get a number? Find your partner or partners, 1s and 2s. There are 3 of you. You need a shared copy of this Google Doc. Go. Shared copy of this Google Doc between you and your partners. You're going to have to sit with them, yeah. Sorry.
That's what I was asking.
Ooh, I got 100.
I'll just go right there.
Oh,
Shared copy of that Google Doc. Shared copy of your Google Doc. Okay, here's what you should see. You should see a chart with pictures in the top left corner. You need a shared copy of this between you and your partners. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the highlights of the civil rights movement. And here's what we're concerned with. Not necessarily people, but events. Because I think some of us have this illusion, and I'll blame this on your English teachers, I guess. A couple of famous people gave a couple of famous speeches, and all of a sudden blacks had equal rights. That's not the history of the civil rights movement. Because the speeches, in and of themselves, don't actually do anything. But most of the time, the purpose of those was to get people behind the movement or encourage them to do something. So what today is about is, what were those things? Okay? And you're going to see pictures. Some of them you might recognize or know what's going on. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to learn about them. A couple of them, you're actually going to be in the picture. I'll explain that when we get to it. Don't worry. We're going to say, when did this event happen? What is that event? And what are 3 facts that I should know about that event? And then scroll to the very bottom of your doc. There's a timeline. So rather than scissors and glue and kindergarten style, cut it out, glue it on there. Oops, I cut it too far. Can you make me a new copy? We're going to do it digitally. So I just put this in a Google Doc. Okay? Now, the pictures are not in chronological order, else it'd be easy to put them on there. Here's what we're going to start with. Everybody find the picture of the bus on your Google Doc. It's towards the bottom, if I'm not mistaken. Find the picture of the bus on your Google Doc. Now, reading is important, but we're going to skip a lot of it so that we get to do the more fun and more interesting part of this. So I might summarize a few things or substitute some. You guys are going to be 1s. You are welcome. It doesn't matter. Okay. It's towards the bottom. Find the same picture that's on my screen. It looks like a bus. You're standing around the bus driver looking back. I like the music a lot better than the fashion, but to each her own. Okay. In the box that says date, anyone know what the heck this picture is of or when this happened? You all have heard this story. Yeah, does anyone know where it was? Yes, ma'am. Okay, here's the year, 1955. One person put that on there, 1955. 1955. It doesn't matter who. 1955. You guys all know this story. You may not know the fine details, but you've heard this before. Rachel, say the name of this event again for the rest of us who weren't listening. Where? Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott is what this event is. So the next box below says event. Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott.
No, it's a school.
Oh my god, we went to space between that.
So, here's the background. You guys remember Jim Crow laws, right? Public segregation, water fountains, movie theaters, lunch counters, city buses. Montgomery, Alabama had a city ordinance that said this. As you can see from the picture, blacks sit in the back. Whites get to sit in the front. I know it's cool to sit in the back now on the basketball bus, but on a city bus, you have to walk further back and go through all these people to get on and off. Because you might be on the bus for 3 minutes. You're not taking one stop all the way to Lovell like you do on a football trip and get comfy in the back. You might be on there for 5 minutes, on and off. So the back is not where you want to be. Secondly, does this bus look pretty full, like all the seats are taken? Okay, white lady named Susie gets on the bus in Montgomery in 1955. What happens?
She takes your seat.
People get up for her.
The blacks must give up their seat and stand. Now, if you've ever been on like a subway or a city bus somewhere, we don't have those in Marbleton, Big Piney. Yeah, but listen, you do it. You do that because you choose to. There's no one that says if you have glasses, give up your seat. You're white, you can't sit down. You're a lady, no, women stand up. It's a polite thing, like it's a veteran, it's an old lady, it's a pregnant woman, it's some family with little kids, you let them have your seat. But the law says blacks give up their seat. Okay? Now, a lot of people say, okay, easy solution to this problem. All the blacks should boycott the buses, don't ride them anymore. The city will have to change the law because now all the buses are half empty and they can't run them all. So the blacks just all refuse to ride. Problem solved. Does anyone know why would most of these people be on this bus at any given day in Montgomery, Alabama? You guys are smarter than my other classes. They're like, to go to the park? To ride around? No. Pretend you live in a big city and you don't have a car. You must get to work and back. And if you cannot get to work on time, Mr. Hanson, what happens to you? Enough times, depending on your boss, might be once, you're fired. You get time for 10. You suggest that to your principal and your school board and make that a thing next year, Mr. Walton. Okay? So here's what... We have more than a month left. Here's the problem. If all the blacks boycott the bus system, how are they going to get to work? Because they don't have cars. Yes, but listen, we're talking a big city. It might be 5 or 6 miles. Okay? You can bike and walk within reason, but it might be hours of walking through bad neighborhoods in the dark.
Get her out of some.
I can tell you've never ridden in a taxi.
Get her out of some.
Now you're thinking. Okay, so here's fact number 1. Does anyone know what kicked off this boycott? You know this. Rosa Parks got arrested for not giving up her seat in 1955. So here's fact number 1. Rosa Parks' arrest sparked this boycott. Rosa Parks' arrest sparked this boycott. Now, why didn't it happen sooner? Because blacks would say, listen, yeah, this is unfair, but we got to get to work somehow. You fail.
Cover up with a hat or
What did you say about
Now you're going to spill that. If you spill it there, I don't even care. That's your problem.
What are you doing?
just about took out 2 computers.
Will you join these two? They need help. Share your Google Doc with her.
The office, they called and wanted to talk to me.
Me?
Have you talked to the office lately?
No.
Hopefully you have to go pee.
I guess. Still share it because she'll come back with you. Okay, here's fact number 2. How are these blacks going to get to work if they boycott the buses?
They're gonna buy a car.
Okay.
To walk.
Carpool.
Carpool. Okay, fact number 2. Blacks are going to have to organize their own carpool system, or else they're all going to lose their
You
jobs.
gotta get a car.
Now, you find a couple with cars and you set up a system kind of like a bus system and say, I'll pick you up at 8, I'll pick you up at 8:15. So fact number 2 is blacks have to set up their own carpool system. Now listen, it'd be really easy to say, let's all boycott the buses. Do you think some people would be afraid to do that or say, I might lose my job? So here's the measure of how successful was it. Fact 3, 90% of blacks stayed off the buses on the first day of the boycott. So 90% of blacks in Montgomery joined in the boycott. Boycotts only work if you get everybody involved. So 90% on the first day is pretty dang good. – 90% of blacks joined the boycott on the first day. Yes, ma'am. Now, we don't have to put this in, okay, but does anyone know what other famous person came on the national stage for the first time as a result of this boycott? Besides Rosa Parks, she sparked it. If you only know one other person from this movement. Martin Luther King Jr. was a young preacher who came down to the South and joined in and started giving speeches and saying we should all do this. And it was kind of his claim to fame. This is what made him famous. Okay? Now, here's what's going to happen. You don't necessarily have to use TCI, but you can. Everyone look at the handout with the pink number I gave you. Your group is going to send one person as tribute to the front to take the spot of someone who's in the picture. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't get to pick, I get to pick. And I do not believe in coincidence. Only the illusion of coincidence. I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to pick. Within your group, look at who has the little star or highlighted mark next to their name. What person?
So we probably don't want
Where are our names at?
Listen, listen, listen. See this list right here? That's you. You don't have names. It's not like Bob Smith.
That's like the whitest name ever.
There's going to be an angry white racist guy on the bus, of course. It's Montgomery, Alabama, 1955.
So that's gonna be us.
Is he white or black?
That's what it says on here.
It says number 3.
Disagrees with segregation. You're the white who says, I support the blacks. That law's unfair.
Oh, then I bet we're still wrong.
No such thing as coincidence. Now, listen. Here's how this works. If you would like to,
Get somebody with really
you will see who gets who. I get to decide.
not a coincidence.
Here's how this works. You have a bulleted list of questions below, starting with who are you and what are you doing. I'm not going to tell you which person from your group, but one of you is going to get picked against your will. You have no say. Come to the front, and you're going to stand where you would be in this picture. So like if you're the bus driver, you get the front seat. Okay? If you're the black person in the back of the bus, you're going to be towards the board right here. And you're going to come up here while the remaining group members quiz you on those bulleted questions. Who are you? What are you doing?
Do we make up a name?
You don't need a name.
Bus to work.
When the music stops, I will tell you who has to come up and take the spot. You're going to make up imagined answers. Like, what would you say if you were that person? You support this law that says blacks have to sit in the back and give up their seat.
Disagrees with the bus segregation.
Did you circle what we?
So you gotta get to work.
It tells you with who's your person.
An African-American passenger who depends on the bus.
So do you want to boycott the buses if you needed to get to work?
So why decided to protest and avoid the bus segregation?
I didn't circle that.
So we would disagree with it.
Well, you're like, listen, I'd like to, but how do I get to work?
Get it?
It's easy to say everybody boycott it, but that's your way to your job. It's not that simple.
Right. Sit down.
So what are we doing if it just says that we disagree with it? We're just getting to work?
Why? Like, you're going to imagine if I was that person, what would they say to that question?
Just getting to work.
Who cares about race and politics? The bus is to get to work. I just got to get to work. Is a boycott going to interfere with your ability to get on a bus? They might have to shut down
We
the...
disagree with it, so we'd still do it.
Boycott of the buses in Montgomery would be successful.
And the last question is going to be, do you think a boycott would be successful in changing this law? If all the blacks refuse to ride the bus, would that force the city to change the law? Yes, sir. You don't need a name. Just describe what you're doing and, like, I'm a white passenger trying to go to work at night or something.
What about
Do we actually have to play this role?
Yes?
what about what do you think would happen if the city's African Americans decided to protest this?
So if they came to you and said they're all going to boycott the buses tomorrow, is it going to work? What would you say?
No.
We've been segregated for as long as I can remember. Nothing's going to change it.
And then I'd oppose that action.
And really think about what that person would say without using like inappropriate racist language, because that gets you OSS for 3 days in my class. Is something like, let them boycott, more space on the bus. We're not going to change it. They can do whatever they want. That's never going to work.
Are you guys white?
Yeah.
What's white?
White passenger.
Who agrees?
Yeah.
Okay. Within your group, listen. Here's how I will decide. This is fair. And if you don't like it, I don't care. I need, as tribute from your group, the shortest member of your group up front.
I was Jordan. Why can't wait. Can we choose?
Who's the shortest member of your group? Send them to me. Come on down. Now, you stand where you would be in this picture.
Am I the girl with the glasses? I'm gonna be.
Are you the white passenger?
Who disagrees with me?
Okay, so
Wait,
we'll
how
put
do
you
know
guys.
who's white in this picture?
You're gonna be first.
Dude, I need a steering wheel.
Okay, your partner needs to keep this.
Oh,
Can you pass that to Carson, please? You and Avery will be like the second seat.
Oh,
and then
damn right I am.
Who's the NAACP member? Who's the NAACP member?
Look at Kyle.
You're awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Tyson, sit down. Okay, here's how this works. Whoever's left at home in your group, you have the handout. Go to those bulleted questions at the bottom. You guys get to quiz them. Now, it goes without saying, I thought, but Monday made me reconsider that. Of course, people harbored things that we would consider to be very inappropriate, racist feelings without crossing the line to what we consider inappropriate in the year 2016. Okay? Some of you are going to have to play a role that makes you uncomfortable. That is the point of this. So don't cry and argue because you're not going to win. It's going to make it worse. Just do not use overtly offensive or racist language, but still play the role that you have to play as per your character. Okay? So we're going to start with the bus driver, and when it's your turn, we'll pass you the mic. Bus driver's up. Bus driver's group, fire away. The questions are on the board if you want to see what's coming.
Okay.
Be loud.
Who are you?
I'm the bus driver.
What are you doing?
Driving the bus.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
You're welcome.
What do you think about Montgomery bus segregation?
I don't like it because the less blacks are at the bus, the less I get paid.
That's good.
What do you think would happen if the city's African Americans decided to protest or disobey the bus segregation?
repeat the question?
If the blacks boycott, what do you think will happen? And would you support them?
I'll be making less money.
Could you potentially lose your job?
Yes.
So do you like the idea of a boycott?
No. If they do, it better happen quick.
Okay, last question for him.
Do you think the boycott of the buses in Montgomery will be successful in advancing the ideals of liberty, equality, and opportunity for Africans?
No, absolutely not.
What will the result of the boycott be for you?
I'll be making less money,
Or
or I'll get fired.
okay, do you see how he's not going to care as much about race and law and equality, he just cares about feeding his kids and his paycheck? Can we blame him for that?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Bus Driver. You can go back. Pass the mic to our first white passenger, please.
White
You
privilege?
can just hold it as a microphone if you don't want to wear it. I don't care.
How close is it to be to your face?
Okay, you guys are up. Hit her with it.
Who are you?
I'm white.
That's not. What are you?
The name's white.
I am a white person riding this bus on my way to work.
Okay, Rachel, can you scoot left like
I didn't
6
ask you
inches?
what you were doing.
Okay, we'll say this is Avery right
Yeah,
here.
she looks really snatched. We should switch. You,
That lady's white or not?
she looks like a
If
snatch.
she's in the
That's
front
all I
seat,
know.
we know she's
I
white.
guess so.
Okay,
That's a
take-
short bus though.
she already said what she's doing.
No,
Listen.
What do you
stupid.
think about Montgomery's bus segregation?
Well, I think we need it because they're kind of the scum of the earth, and it's always been this way, and it better stay this way.
Are you talking about this other night? Y'all, sorry.
Next question.
It ain't gonna change.
What do you think would happen if the city's African Americans decided to protest and disobey the bus segregation law? Would
Well-
you support or oppose such action?
They've never been successful before, so they'd fail again.
Would you support or oppose such action?
Well,
If they boycotted, would you support them or oppose the boycott?
Hey,
I'd oppose it.
do you think a boycott of the buses in Montgomery would be successful in advancing the ideals of liberty, equality, and opportunity for African Americans?
White girl number 2, be quiet.
Hey, I'm that guy.
She's a guy.
I'm sorry, my
What,
white
man?
friend over here was talking. Could you repeat that
Is the
question?
boycott going to be successful and get the law changed?
Oh, no.
Why not?
Because they're black, and I'm white, and it's always been that way, and it's not going to change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Why are you clapping?
Yeah, you're black.
Okay, next.
Who are you?
It's such a stupid question. Shut up. I'm a white person that is just trying to get to work. That answers what are you doing, please. Just like that. I think it's really good because they're people too. What is that? Wait. You think it's bad? Okay. I meant it's really, really bad.
Only one racist white person in the room.
Yeah. I just said I meant. I'm sorry. They're really, really bad, and they need to be
that's
changed.
bad.
No.
Not anymore.
Oh, she's right, I think.
Yeah, they need to be changed. That's not bad.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
The city's African Americans decided to protest or disobey the bus segregation, would you support or oppose such action?
If they boycott the buses,
I would really support that decision.
what would happen?
The buses would, like, need them since they are on there a lot, and it's about 50-50 with white and black, so they would lose, like, a lot of their profit, and so they would feel like they needed to have blacks sit wherever they wanted to, so that they would get back on the bus.
So do you think it would work?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think a boycott of the buses in Montgomery would be successful in advancing the ideals of liberty, equality, and opportunity?
Quit it.
She can restate it.
Interesting question.
That's okay.
It's not?
Yes, it would
Do you
be.
need help putting that back in?
No, I got it. Don't you worry.
Thank you. Pass the mic. It doesn't matter the order, but we'll have Stephanie go last.
Who are you?
I'm Jayana.
Are you kidding me right now?
Continue, please.
We're not even close to, never mind.
Hey, Joe Bob Bubba Smith, you watch yourself.
That's the whitest thing I've ever.
I'm riding the bus to work.
Okay,
I know what he's talking
let's listen to the lady.
You don't depend on the
Continue,
bus.
please.
No, I don't.
What do you think about the Montgomery's bus segregation?
I think it's wrong, and yeah,
That's too bad.
it's wrong.
What do you think would happen if the city's African Americans decide to protest or disobey the segregation law? Would you support or oppose such action?
I would support it because it needs to be changed. Because it's discrimination.
Do you think a boycott of the buses in Montgomery would be successful in advancing the ideals of liberty, equality, and opportunity for African Americans? Why or why not?
Yes, because they need us to get money and stuff.
So it'll work if they do it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just hold it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We up now?
He's up, then you're last. Who are you?
Jamar. The name's Jamar.
What are you?
I'm riding the bus to work.
Okay, what do you think about Montgomery's bus segregation?
I don't like it. I wish we were all equal, but it's my only way to work, so I'm just gonna do what they say.
What do you think about bus driver? What do you think would happen if the city's African Americans decided to protest or disobey or apply segregation laws? Would you support or oppose such action?
I think it's a good thing, but I'm not gonna participate in it because it's my only way to work, so I'm just gonna keep riding the bus.
Does that make sense that some blacks would say, even though that's a good idea, I'm not going to join in? People who have lived in big cities, if you don't have public transportation and you don't have a car or a bike, how is she going to keep her job? She won't. So do you think some people said, I just want my job, I don't want to make any trouble? So that's a valid perspective from an African American. Continue, please.
Do you think boycott of the buses in Montgomery would be successful in advancing the ideals of liberty, equality, and opportunity for African Americans? Why or why not?
It probably will be successful after a while when the bus companies don't get enough money because half of their riders are blacks.
Except for you, because you don't have the guts to do it.
Yeah, I'll be on there.
Okay, thank you. Last but not least.
All right. Who are you?
I'm a black lady, riding on a bus to work.
What are you doing?
Just answered that question.
Who do you work for? How about
Who
that?
do you work for?
I don't know.
Do you remember the acronym?
No. NSAP number?
NAA, so NAACP.
Yeah, that.
National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So basically like a black rights organization. She works for them.
So what do you...
Four doesn't make it in the acronym, son.
Sure.
Continue.
What do you think about Montgomery's bus segregation law?
I think it's bad since us black people don't get the same civil rights on the bus.
What do you think would happen if the city's African Americans decided to protest or disobey the bus segregation law? Would you support or oppose such action?
I don't know. I would probably support it because, it's not fair for black people, I guess.
Do you think a boycott of the buses in Montgomery would be successful in advancing the ideals of liberty, equality, and opportunity for African Americans? Why or why not?
I think it would be successful since,
the bus owners won't get their money since, you know, we're probably 50% who pay for their, you know, payments and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, here's what you have to remember. It seems obvious. You say, all right, if all the blacks just refuse to ride the buses, they'll have to change the rule. But that's easier said than done. Like Rachel's character is going, listen, I totally agree, but I got to keep my job, or else my kids are going to starve. Right? I can't pay the bills without my job. So what's the thing that sparks them into actually doing this boycott? In 1955. Rosa Parks getting arrested, and then everyone goes, all right, screw it, we're doing it. And 90% of blacks join the boycott on the very first day. Then guys like Martin Luther King Jr. come down and start speaking. It gets national attention. That's really the first major event in terms of protests in the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s. Okay? So here's what you're going to do. That should be filled out. Highlight that whole thing, one person on your Google Doc, and Control X to cut it. Go find on the bottom number line where that should fit. Because when we're done, they'll all be on the number line, trust me. If you don't like my way at the end, you can do it your way.
You can't do it?
Where on the number line it goes.
Okay, now what do you do when you control X?
Now go find on the bottom, see how it's a number line?
Oh, yeah.
Control V on the year it needs to go to.
Are we on 1955?
It should say on your chart.
I already got it.
Yes, 1955 is when this started. Now, when you have that pasted on 1955, if you just look maybe a scroll or two above that, you'll see this picture. If there's one picture that I think you guys will relate to most, it's probably this one, especially if you know the context in which it was taken. No. The bottom one should now be this picture. Anyone know the date or like the famous name for this event?
The kids going to Little Rock.
The Little Rock 9 is what we're going to call this event. How'd you know that? See why we're not doing a month of civil rights? You guys already know some of this stuff. That's awesome. More time on Vietnam. I know. It's like you did Holocaust one semester, civil rights the other. That's great. I get to teach different stuff now. Okay, this event is 1957 is the date. We're going to just call the event the Little Rock 9. Anyone know where the nickname comes from? Applin? I'm going to Snapchat you something if you don't put that away.
Wow. Little Rock, Arkansas.
Anyone know how they got this name? So, Little Rock...
Nine kids in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay, rather than act out the picture,
What's the school name?
Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, 1957, okay, a group of 9 African American students went to school in September. You're like, why is that some important event? Has anyone ever had a bad or really good, notable first day of school? Like at my new school and my new place, or my first day in high school? Like, my first day, I'll always remember that. Really good or really bad? I do. I remember every day, like my first day of high school. Okay? If you have a notable one, here's what I want you to do in your head. Compare yours, whatever you thought of. I'll go my first day of high school when I was a student, not a teacher. Okay? I'm kind of cursed. I have first days of school for the rest of my life until I die or quit or get fired. I'll pretend my first day when I'm a freshman. Okay? Compare this to your first day. In 1954, a Supreme Court case that affects all of you as you sit here right now today. Tyson, listen. Brown versus Board of Education. Have you heard of this? 1954.
Yeah.
Supreme Court case that was about what?
Integrating schools.
Yes. Can public schools segregate races? Black school, white school. Until 1954, yes. But now the Supreme Court, the highest court in the United States, says no longer can you do that. Here's what's interesting. We all assume, okay, Supreme Court said so, so now you have to do it. You underestimate racist Southern governors in the 1950s. Okay? So, the first one,
No. That was a president,
J. Edgar Hoover?
he was the director of the FBI, son.
He still wasn't.
Listen, here's the first one. In Arkansas, so this is 1957. Here's fact number one. Fact number one.
What was the guy that drove the tank?
What are you talking about? The guy who drove?
He drove a white tank around town.
Bulldog.
Bulldog.
Like Bulldog.
Yeah, but what's his
nickname.
actual name? I swear it was
The general?
No.
He
He
was
drove the tank around
governor
like
of
he's the racist.
Alabama, Montgomery. Who is it?
Governor George Wallace?
No.
Okay.
When did this happen? Like just recently?
He drove around a white. He had a white tank that he drove.
He was kind of a step.
Okay, I have a video of. You guys are confusing me with white.
Boston is terrible.
If there's
You
a
should
black
not
dude
be
driving a
able to
black tank, he'd be a stud too.
I think anybody who drives a tank.
Okay.
Cool.
I agree with you, Matthew.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Listen, that is not exactly relevant. Paige, you're distracting him.
He didn't run over anybody.
Okay. Moving on from tanks. Okay, not from the military, but from tanks. Here's fact number one. Arkansas's governor refused to allow segregation in his schools. So the Supreme Court said in 1954, you must desegregate. Fact number one. Arkansas's governor refused to follow the Supreme Court's directive. He said, we're keeping our schools segregated. Arkansas's governor refused to desegregate his schools. Now, not tanks, but somewhat related. When the Supreme Court says everyone in America has to do it, we just assume, like, okay, it has to happen. What if a governor says, no, make me? And here's fact number two. Who is the commander-in-chief of the Arkansas National Guard?
The governor.
The governor deploys 10,000 National Guard troops to keep the students out of the school. That's fact number two. Arkansas's government deployed 10,000 National Guard troops.
Did you really think it would even take that many, or just because he could?
Well, wait till fact number three.
Arkansas was fact number two.
Arkansas's governor deployed 10,000 National Guard troops to Little Rock, Arkansas. He said to keep the peace, but in reality, and I'll show you his speech in a second, to prevent segregation. He mobilized 10,000 National Guardsmen. So he basically said, make me segregate. I'm putting 10,000 guys that I command as governor around the school. What now, federal government? Yeah, you should hear what he said about the union. Okay, and Mississippi's governor was worse. Yes,
What was his name?
George Wallace. Now, here's fact number three. All of this, remember, is over 9 black kids who are trying to go to school on the first day in September. Who's president in 1957?
John F. Kennedy.
Before JFK. Good guess.
Lyndon B. Johnson.
He's responsible for the interstate system.
Oh, I know
Eisenhower?
that.
President Eisenhower looks at 10,000 National Guard troops and says, you still have to let these kids in your school. So guess what he did?
Send him home.
He sent the U.S. Army in to make the Arkansas National Guard let them go to school. So President Eisenhower sent the United States Army to escort them to school. They walked them to class as bodyguards.
What if we were to get
Is this the
attacked and
third
all of our
one?
people were just protecting like 9 black kids?
The National Guard.
What if
fights the
Mexico's like,
army.
oh, they were black people, what's that?
So President Eisenhower sent the United States Army to escort them to school.
No, you're doing it. I tried to help you.
Now, I'm not sure if we understand the gravity of this. On the state level, you have 10,000 Arkansas National Guardsmen saying, keep the peace, stay out. Here was the governor's reason. He said, listen, if we segregate, my town's going to riot and go crazy and lynch every black guy. So I'm doing the blacks a favor by deploying the National Guard. There might be a little sliver of truth in that, but he's really trying to keep them out of his schools. So the president sends the same unit that parachuted in the night before D-Day in World War II to escort 9 black kids to school in 1957. The 101st Airborne Division got sent in to go through the Arkansas National Guard and say, you cannot tell the federal government what to do. We are letting them come in your school, like it or not, you racist governor. Okay, so that's fact number 3. Eisenhower sent the United States Army, the 101st Airborne, to basically walk them to school. Okay, now, in that picture, can you see the hatred in those white girls' faces? The one that's screaming, anyone know what she was standing? At that black girl with the sunglasses? Lynch them, lynch them, lynch them. As they were walking to school, because the Supreme Court...
The one that's just staring at her is creepier.
That's, to me, if you want to see the face of, like, pure, malicious hatred, it's the girl to the right who's not yelling.
She's just sitting there staring.
Just that
She reminds me
sinister...
She reminds me of the mom off of this book we just read, the cartoon one, the lesbian one.